Good afternoon in New York, the United States and Canada. Good evening in Africa, Europe, Israel, and the United Kingdom. Good early morning in New Zealand, and welcome whatever time of day or night it is for those joining us from the rest of the world. I'm Yael Danieli, founder and executive director of the International Center for the Study, Prevention, and Treatment of Multigenerational Legacies of Trauma, ICMGLT for short. The ICMGLT is headquarters where the Lenape lived before and during colonization of the Americas. We recognize these indigenous people of Manhattan, their displacement, dispossession, and continued presence. Thank you for joining us on this special webinar. Today's International Center for Multigenerational Legacies of Trauma webinar is unique in that to celebrate the Jewish New Year of 5783, we invited Israeli artist David Dudu Gershtein to present his lifetime's work, rather than to hold our usual format of a group discussion. This unique occasion also follows our awards dinner or an awards event where we awarded two creative artists, D.W. Gregory, for utilizing her exquisite, accessible playwriting to educate and inspire change by exposing the destructive legacies of systemic conspiracy of silence. As well, we awarded Declan O'Rourke for applying his abundant talents and empathic knowledge to convey the horrors of the Great Hunger for generations of Ireland and the world. I'm a clinical psychologist, victimologist, traumatologist, and psychohistorian, and devoted much of my career to studying, treating, and preventing multi-generational impacts of massive trauma, to victims' rights, and to reparative justice. Today, Dudu will reflect on the distinct history, methodology, and lessons he learned throughout his journey of becoming one of today's most prominent and sought-after Israeli artists around the world. His work combines the multi-generational learning of the art of cutting from his father, who, like his own father, was a leather shop owner, and his mother's talents in women's craft traditions. His father and uncle escaped from Poland, and the remaining family members were murdered in the Holocaust. His mother's family immigrated to Palestine before the war. The webinar will focus on Dudu's most distinctive outdoor sculptures around the globe. In his own words, I especially like working on outdoor sculptures since they force me to confront technical problems of a different nature. Sorry, Dudu. I must consider the location, the environment, the mode of living or working of people there, which is very much our center's spirit. This is extremely challenging for me, Dudu says, and it is very important to my continual involvement as an artist. We have about an hour and a half for the webinar, though we have known to have run a bit over. Dudu will present for about an hour. Following an interchange among us, I will open the floor to questions or brief comments from the virtual audience. Dudu will then share his what we call last words. Please use the chat function and we'll do our best to respond to as many as we can. Shalom, Dudu. I give the screen floor to you.
Okay. Thank you, Yael. And I will start by telling the audience that, as you said, the outdoor works are very important for me, but they are just part of a lot of other things that I do, like wall sculptures, like painting, like ceramics, like watercolors, and etc. But I like to concentrate on this type of work because they are scattered around the world, and it's not like an exhibition where you can see a lot of work together. Every time you have to go another place, another country to see it. So here we have a concentration of works that give the development, or I would say the variety of works that I do. And I will start by showing the Israeli part. Half of the presentation will be the Israeli sculpture that I did in Israel, and the other half around the world. And unfortunately, outdoor sculpture needs a lot of picture to fill the space, to see it from different angles. But since we don't have the time, so I will show a few pictures of each one and give a few words, and so we can go on and follow the works, and in the limit of the time that we have. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I will share the screen with my presentation. Here I'm in my studio, my private studio, where this was taken a few years ago, but it's I'm doing painting. Recently, I do a lot of painting as well. So here is a feeling of my studio. This is another part of my private studio, where I do my watercolors, my sketches and everything. And I'm saying this is my private studio because other part of the studio I'm sharing with my assistant that helped me produce other works. Here are the other floor where my assistant are working with me, and just give you the feeling of the space in the studio. It's very large, and every assistant has his corner where he can make his work. And here are some ceramics pieces that are on display, and on the wall, some of my wall sculptures. And behind is the room for mixing colors. And here myself doing some work also a few years ago, but just give you an idea how I do the work. Here it's a little bit outside the studio in the yard because it needs a lot of space and light. And now we start looking at the sculptures from the beginning. This is the first outdoor sculpture I ever made in 1988. I was invited by an architect, a landscape architect, after he saw my exhibition at the Israel Museum, and I made a sort of a children playground that correspond with a piece of little wood around it in Jerusalem. And the idea was to make artificial trees and connected to children plays, and surrounded by a wall that contained sand, sea sand, so children can play. And this is the picture is not very clear, but there are a lot of birds on the tree and different animals. And that's a general look. And you see, this is a place where children can play on the sea sand and different place. In fact, it started as a bigger project, but little by little, the budget shrinked, and finally I did 4 trees and a few games, and it's part of a big park. Okay, then I moved to another series of sculptures along the way to Herzliya, between Herzliya and Kfar Shmaryahu, and the driver can see it along as they drive along. So it's a sculpture that you capture in a few seconds, and there are 7 like this along the road, and they're different from both sides. So on the way home, you see one side, on the way back, you see another side, and it gives you the feeling of home, because flowers always represent something that the home, I can consider it as something that give you the feeling of being at home. So these are the sculpture, and here there's one of them was hit by a car. And in fact, it's not the only one that was hit by a car. Unfortunately, there were, I don't know if it take the attraction of the drivers, and but I had a few cases where cars crashed into the sculpture, and I had to fix it back. So here is an example of one of the poor sculpture that was hit by a car. And now we're going to another sculpture in the campus of Tel Aviv University. I call it Spirit of Freedom. And the feeling is they represent my idea about students at the stage where they can fly and feel the freedom of thought, freedom of expression. And the butterfly are meant to express the feeling of freedom. Always people consider butterflies as the free animals. They can fly anywhere, and very sort of positive animals. And the runner is like aiming towards towards the sky, towards a new horizon, and that represents my feeling about the university and the academic. So here another side of the sculpture, and it's about 5 meters high, the sculpture, and you can see here a few angles, and it's in a very central place in the university, and not far from the Museum of the Jewish history. Okay, so now we go to another large sculpture I made still in the 90s, and it was representing the city of Rehovot. The city of Rehovot has 2 dominant factors. One is the oranges that it was known for at the time where Israel wasn't even a state, and the Weizmann Institute, which is the Center for Studies and Research of Science. So I combine the orange, the round orange, and the different symbols of science inside. So I call it a scientific orange. And the city hall is behind it, and also there is a big shopping mall behind it. And the sculpture was erected while the city hall was open, and it was a result of a competition in Israel, which I won, and it lasted many years, I would say, but lately, unfortunately, the city changed changed the square, and without telling me, they threw the sculpture away. I was quite shocked that it disappeared. And finally, and I was looking for it, couldn't find it. The city didn't collaborate with me. And finally, I was lucky to find it not far from where the city has the Department of Gardens. And here it is, the sculpture that you saw before, thrown away, and without telling me, that's the way I found it. So I was, you can see the sign here say the Department of Gardens and Design in the city of Rehovot, and look what they did with the sculpture. Very, very frustrating. And I must say that I have a few cases like that, where sculpture that cities or institutions spend a lot of money in creating, they weren't taken care of, and sculpture has to be taken care of, just like a garden, like anything else. Like people take care of the car, they should take care of sculptures as well. But that's what happened to the sculpture. And here it is back in Jerusalem, because finally I managed to get the sculpture back from the city of Rehovot after a big fight with them. And I'm going to fix it and install it in a beautiful square in Jerusalem. So now it will be in a possession of Jerusalem. And here you can see some of the places where the sculpture was chopped. And I don't know, people just use the metal for something, and it's very sad to see. Another sculpture is in the Negev, and this sculpture was called Oel Moed. The idea was to make a place where people from three religions can get together and sit and talk between themselves, find some compromise, some way to get to live together. Each side represents another religion. The red would be Christianity, the green will be Islam, and the blue Jewish religion. And on the top is like the prophet that holds the place of Israel, the shape of the land pointing to the sky. So every religion has a prophet that connect between God and the people. And here and down there, I thought of having chairs, and people can go inside in the Negev, where it's very, very calm, and also it's the place where, connect between a few countries around. And it was in a sculpture garden of Hatzerim. It's a kibbutz in the Negev, near Beersheba. And again, unfortunately, it was erected at the time where the Chinese made the Olympic Games, and they needed a lot of metal, and they were looking for metal all over the world. So the Bedouin, most likely it's the Bedouin, just cut the sculpture down and chopped it to pieces to send the metal to China. And unfortunately, I couldn't put it again, and the sculpture disappeared. And but I always say that it's the first sculpture that I sent to China, because later I made a lot of sculpture in China, and I'm invited all the time to put sculpture. And this one was sent by pieces to China. So unfortunately, that's another side. And you see the shadow here is very beautiful casting. And this here you can see a close up of different places. And that's the prophet and it turns around with the wind, by the way. And that symbolizes the land of Israel. And that's like a mashrabia. It's a very oriental kind of feeling. And that's the end of that sculpture. Here is another one that I made in Tel Aviv. It was commissioned by the city of Tel Aviv. They wanted something around the tree. And I made the table in a coffee shop that was very, very popular at the time in the 60s, called Kassit. And it was just in front of Kassit. And that's where all the writers and poets and artists used to sit and talk and meet and discuss and everything. And that's what they live after after they go. But this sculpture I called homage to Alterman, the poet, and I put one of his poet written on the table. So that's like a very strong homage to Alterman, you see? And that's Dizengoff Street. And under the tree was a dog that was pissing just to be part of the sculpture. In fact, there's an interesting story about it, but I don't want to make it too long, so I will leave the story. But this picture, one of this dog, was also featured on one of the books by Paul Auster that was translated to Hebrew. Another sculpture is for the city of Holon, and the city wanted to the artists to do sculptures after children stories, children books. And this one goes after a children book called the Bird of Soul Bird. And it shows the bird with different drawer inside, and each one contain a person creating some kind of emotion or feeling. So it's like the body language of people create sort of images of love, of passion, of different ideas that can be expressed by the body. You see, and this that sculpture is about 8 meter long and 4 meter high. It's quite big. That's another sculpture in the garden of Tefel Museum. Tefel Museum is a sculpture museum in the Galilee that was created by Steph Wertheim, and he wanted to create an area of like industrial area that has spiritual feeling. So he had the means to bring many sculptures and scatter them in the ground, so it make the people that work in this area feel like they are inside a museum, or they're working in a very spiritual way. This sculpture called the Ladder of Motive. I took different motives of I consider Israeli motives that I use. Some of them I use in my art, and I put them together as something that concentrate and call attention to different motive, like the pomegranates, like the moon, like the wing, like the donkey, and different motive. Here is a foot, and this sculpture lately was moved to Haifa because the son of Steph sold the area, or I would say the industrial area that belonged to him. He sold it, and all the sculpture was scattered in different places in Israel. And the sculpture was taken to Haifa, to the Hecht Museum, I think under the Haifa University. And I haven't seen it in the new place, but that's where it is now. Okay, that's another sculpture that was made in Mitzpe Ramon. It's a memory of somebody that called Shneur Cheshin, that was a cyclist, and he was hit by a car while he was riding and died, and the family wanted to make a memorial for him. So I made his image cut out from a curtain steel. So it's hollow, and that's the hollow that I think that the family feels that is missing. So it's like transparent, and above him there is a group of birds flying, which comes from a dream that his brother had about him. So I use the story that he was telling about the doves or the birds that flew above his brother, and created some composition of the colorful birds, which represent happiness and all the good things in the world, against the missing part of his figure. And this is the other side of the sculpture. The core of the sculpture is made of curtain steel, which is rusted metal. So there's a very strong contrast between the rusted metal and the birds. Here we are going to Netanya, the city of Netanya, that commissioned a series of sculpture about sport. Netanya is considered as a city of sport, just as Holon is a city of children books, children at all. So Netanya adopted the sport images, and they asked me to make along the road different sculptures of sport. And just as the sculpture in Herzliya, the cars are riding between the side along the middle of where the sculpture are located. And there are about 7 sculptures like that along the way. And that's another sculpture that was made in a high school in Ashkelon. And the idea was rising sun. I call it rising sun. But the idea was that each beam of the sun is a person, because there is a phrase in Hebrew says every person is a beam of light. So I made 12 figures that also taken represent the 12 tribes of Israel, or the 12 months in the year, all the 12 numbers that are very considered the Israeli culture, the Jewish culture. So I call it this rise, and I felt that it fits a school because they started live, the children started live, and I wanted to give them the feeling of the freshness of sunrise, and the importance of each person, which is individual. You see, they all look alike, but each one is painted individually, but yet there is a flow of movement between them. So that's what I consider part of the education, to follow some pattern, but yet keep the individual aspect of each figure. So let's see the other side. See, the other side is less movement, but also keep the individual side, although the figures are the same, but the each one has a different character. So that's called sunrise. Another sculpture is in Haifa. It calls the Bat Yam. It's like siren coming from the water, coming from the sea. And these sort of sail are moving with the wind, they're moving around the sculpture. And each side is a part of a whole, of an image. And once they get all in the same side, they create an image that has a flow inside. So it's like a picture that the wind can blow, because each one is a different size, so it blows differently. And so they're moving around the figure, and once in a while they get together and they create the image that gets together. And the other side is like something different, impressionist image. Also, from time to time, it blow and gets together and became one image. So, and the figure of the siren is very transparent. From a different angle, it's transparent, but and that's give it very airy feeling. It's a figure that is sort of come and go. You can see it and it disappears in your eyes, and it comes again. Depends on where you look at it, from which angle. And it's unfortunately we cannot see it with too many pictures, so we get only what I can show here. And that's another sculpture in Nahariya. It's grapes with different colors. The colors mostly of different colors of grape, greens and red, and very dark red, and so on. And it's a symbol of sort of Jewish heritage. As we know, when Moses came to Israel and they sent the Meraglim to the country, and they came back with the grapes. So for me, it was like something very symbolic to our country. So I thought it would be nice to make a sculpture out of it. Okay, we go on. That's a sculpture in Ramat HaSharon. It's a head, while the inside has figures that I call Ishonim. Ishonim is small people, I would say. And also Ishonim is what we call the eye. When you look at the eye of every person, the word is Ishon, which is mean a person, like a figure. And because when we look at one's eye, it reflects the one that look at it. But it's part of something that I was engaged with a bit earlier, because I was interested in the I would say the method of checking the figure by looking at the eye. They call iridism. I think it's iridium or something like that. People, they can read what sickness people has through reading the eye, and it's part of experience that I went through with my mother when she was very sick. So I decided to do a sculpture that the eyes are moving. Here there are about 4 layers of figures that are moving by the hand. You can put your hand and move the figure around. So that's like a moving part inside the sculpture. Let's see the other side. See, this is the other side here. You see the figure a little better, you know, and they are all the time moving when not mechanically, but with the hand. You can move them, and you can change the position of the eye. So this one is, I donated it to a sculpture garden in Ramat HaSharon in a memory of a curator of the Museum of Ramat HaSharon, where he gave me an exhibition some years ago, years before. And since he died, I thought that would be on his memory. Okay, another sculpture in Ramat Gan. That's a city where I live, but at that time I wasn't a citizen of Ramat Gan. It's like an angel standing on top of a kind of a building. This one is a symbolic for the building behind. And I thought when I look at building, I try to peel the surface and see what's inside. So the sculpture represent the people that populate the building. And here we see the building behind, and you don't know what's going on inside. So I made a sculpture where there's no walls, and it's all peeled off, and you can see different figures. And it was done after another sculpture that we'll see later that I made in Singapore that has some kind of similar feeling and attitude. So here we see another angle of it. And this angle that connect between the building and something more spiritual, something that on the top, on the sky. And this is another figure in the bottom. So it gives you an idea about the sculpture. But in fact, when you move around it, you discover all the time many things that you don't see at first sight. And as you lift your eyes, you can see up to 4 floors and discover the different people. Here is the angel. Now I'm showing you a lobby of building, because part of my work is also doing works in lobby of buildings. So this is a lobby of a factory, or I would say importer of paint for cars. And this is the paint that I use for my sculptures. So they asked me to do a wall for them, and I mix the brush strokes with the cars. So it gives you an idea how it looks. And that's another company that deals with cars, also asked me to decorate the lobby of the company. So I made different cars. And the middle car is a Susita Israeli car that was produced in Israel in the 60s and 70s, I think, that wasn't very successful and stopped the production after a few years. But the company became very big, but today, very, very big. But at that time, in the 60s, they only started with the poor Susita that was made of some kind of, even not metal, it was made of fiberglass. The car itself was fiberglass. I think they justify the stopping of the production of it. Now we're going to the Hebrew University, where I made a few sculptures in the campus, and each sculpture represents a different part of the university. This one is the school for different students from overseas. So it's the pomegranate in the outside and different part of the world. It's like a moving part inside, moving with the wind. And the dots are symbolized from one side, the fruit of the pomegranate, but on the other side, different spots on the globe. And the pomegranate and the globe are like the same round shape. And that symbolize this faculty of foreign student. Another sculpture is in the department of the university in Rehovot, is the School for Agriculture. So I made a tree between the many trees in the campus, and it's filled with butterflies. So the white tree with the butterfly make a very strong impression. And I made it especially white, so it stands out between all the green trees. And that's the entrance to the Senate of the university. And it's a head within a head, because the Senate is like the part of the university that direct all the activity of the university. So I made a silver head, which is standing inside the head. You know, the intellectual always consider as a round head. They call them round egg head, round head. So that's like symbolic for intellectuals. So the small head is represent the Senate, which is within the university. So it's the entrance to the Senate. From here, the entrance, they're getting into the Senate. Here is a close-up for the sculpture. And another sculpture in the university is a bicycle rider, which was done, in fact, before they even thought of making a different sculpture for each department. But since she is riding with the wind, we thought it would be nice to put it in the faculty of Mada'ei HaRuach. It's I don't know how you say it in English.
Actually, yeah, it's humanities, but in Hebrew it translates literally to sciences of the winds.
But
you have to.
But the Mada'ei HaRuach is sort of whatever is not mathematics but spiritual, like I would say sifrut and poetry and whatever. Okay, and that's another sculpture I made last year. It's in Soroka Hospital. They asked me to make a place where donors can get the names, because they get a lot of donors that giving money to the hospital, and each one wants to put his name. So I made a tree that has fruit, like sort of oranges, but in the shape of a heart, sort of a hapapa, sorry. Half. I don't have a closer picture because I wanted to make the presentation shorter, but you can see each individual orange has names of the donors. And of course, there are butterflies and flowers, and the whole tree is very impressive at the entrance of the place, of this hospital. Here we're getting into something quite recent. It's a sukkah that I made last year, not this year, last year in Tel Aviv in Rabin Square. And it's made of Hebrew letters. The Hebrew letters are very important in my eyes, and I thought it also has a very interesting shapes. And there is a say that the world was born by the word. So I wanted to give importance to the Hebrew letters, and it's different fonts and very colorful. So all the walls are made of letters and very colorful. So it's very pleasure for the eye. And here you can see part of it. It was done about 2 years ago. And here is the big picture of it. And in fact, luckily, it was sold to an American collector, a lawyer from New York, named Luxembourg, I think Arthur Luxembourg. He's a big lawyer, very famous lawyer. And he wanted to place it this year in Sukkot, near the Hudson vessel in New York City. But because of the storm, the tornado that was hitting US, the authorities were afraid that it will blow with the wind. So they made very strong restriction, and finally it wasn't done in the place where he thought. But I hope that maybe next year it will find its place in this. And I was expecting to see it in New York, and I was very excited to have my sukkah near the Hudson vessel in 34th Street, I think, and it didn't happen. So let's hope for next year. Okay, this one is a sculpture I made for a startup company that deals with analytics and so on. And this is a sofa. In fact, the center is a sofa, and all the rest is made figure that are done by pixels. And the pixel, as you know, is the elements of a lot of the high-tech creation. And so I thought we becoming like robots, and they become made as if we are made of pixels, little by little, you know. So I thought it would be nice to make a comment about it. So one figure is sitting, one figure is running, and one standing, and it gives an environment that is quite joyful. And you can sit inside, in the middle, the double a couch, 2 people can sit there, and I enjoy very much doing it. And it's an indoor piece, in fact. So here we see some close-up of the sculpture. That's the couch, you know, or the sofa, I would say. Another sculpture in Haifa is a memorial for somebody called Ruby Shapira, which was a big fan of the local Hapoel Haifa, and he donated a lot of money and efforts. And finally, he was a big constructor, I think, in work in Africa, but somehow in the end of his life, he lost his business, and his family died. So the family wanted to make a memorial to his love for football. So the city gave him a square, and I made this sculpture on a very low budget, I must say. But it's a memorial that I think a lot of people remember him, help remember him. And now,
Dudu, might we start moving to the rest of the world? We are almost an hour now.
Hour? Wow.
Yeah, okay. Wow. So it's very interesting. It's just fascinating. But
stay with me another hour.
We do want the rest of the world. And
stay with me another hour. This okay.
If people want to stay, yeah, go ahead.
So here we are in Herzliya, just a few words. It's the area, the Shchuna, where Yigal Amir was born and lived, but that was done before he made his crime. and that's street cats. I made a sort of a homage to street cats, and so that's in Herzliya. And now of that, it's a sculpture I made in the Negev. We go fast on it. It's of that is an archaeological site. And now we are getting into the worlds, this sculpture around the world. This piece was just sent to me last week. It's a butterfly that were installed in Taiwan in a train station. So I'm proud to show it almost for the first time because it arrived last week. So here you can see the train coming, and there are about 80 butterflies flying all around the station. And I must say that Taiwan dedicate a lot of resources to make sculpture in different places, and it's very, very nice. And here it's a university in China, a university that dedicate to design and the technology of design. And I made them a colored window, I would say vitrage color windows that was printed by a technology that was made in Israel, developed in Israel, and the machines are being dispersed around the world. So I became a fan of this technology, and it was produced in China by the Israeli machines. So here are a few pictures of the images. And the Chinese student, you can see that the windows are in the classes in here. So you have a quick look at the glass window. And here I took a picture to show you how they couldn't bring it by an elevator. So they took Chinese workers, and they had to lift it about 14 floors to put it into the place. So they send me pictures and how they move it on the stairs. And it's amazing, amazing that, the amount of efforts that they made to install it. So that's just a nice comment about it. And that's partitions also made of the same glass, printed glass that I made with the Chinese people. And it takes some traditional Chinese vessels, vase, and combine it with abstract painting. So that's, and here is another image of partitions. Partition is a very big tradition in China. So I made my discovery, made a partition in a stained glass. And that's another the faculty of Chinese school, the Northwest Technological University, and that's a sculpture in front and of the building. And inside they made also an exhibition of my works. So here is one of my wall sculptures, and also a design of plants that was designed by an Israeli designer. So here is a sort of an exhibition where you can see the combination of agriculture, plants, and they very much care for the environment in the university. So they combine my sculpture with the plants, and I think it has a very pleasant look together, the sculpture and the plants together. So here they have different sculpture on the wall, but you can see only part of it. And that's another project that I made in China. It's unfortunately, I cannot show the installation because it's a very big story and very, I would say, strange story. how the project went and what happened to it. But I was asked to make about 30 figures, Chinese figures, inside a center for tourists in Hainan, in Haikou, Hainan. It's a island in the south of China. If you know, Hainan is also a name of a airways in China that also fly to Israel. So I made about 30 figures. Each one is about 180, made of aluminum. So here I show you some figures. They're all Chinese. And because of a certain situation, they didn't put it in the way I wanted. They just scatter it in the center. So each figure became individual, and I wanted to be in a group. So, but here I show you only a few samples of many figures that I made, all Chinese people. This one on the left is a woman that cleaned the streets, and that's the way they are dressed, and you can see them everywhere. And so here again, some people, and like also on the left, this figure holding this weight, and I thought it's only images that you see in the 17th century China, but in fact, it's part of daily life. So I want to show you these images because I thought, it's an interesting project that I made. Here, it's a nice story. I was commissioned to make a big sculpture on a wall, outdoor wall for somebody, and I didn't know who was the client. And a few years later, somebody sent me a picture of it. It's in the Bahamas. I didn't even know where it was, in the Bahamas. And it happened to be the home of Oprah Winfrey. So I was very happy that my piece went into very interesting figures. And that's where the sculpture was before it was shipped. So I took a picture of it, and that's how, and that's how it was installed finally. So that's the home of Oprah Winfrey. Okay, now it's another project in China that was made during the Corona time. I was invited to make a sculpture in agriculture area between about 20 artists that they invited. The Chinese wanted to give importance to certain areas, so they asked artists to create sculptures. This is the middle of a plantation of tea, and I call it tea for two. And you see the tea cups are floating above the tea plantation, and it was very successful, I would say. And now I was invited to another agriculture project down in the south of China. So I'm making something else, but this one partly because it was the Corona time. They made, according to my plans, they made the cups. They all made in the stainless steel, and I made what do you call it, a beam, not flames, but the vapors that goes up, and they combine it together, and that's how we collaborate. They made the big part that is difficult to ship from Israel, and I made the parts that I can do in my studio, and I never saw it in my eyes. I send the pieces, and what I see is what you see, only some pictures, see? And here's some images of how it looks in the nature. And I think it's a very nice idea, to install sculpture in unexpected places. I think agriculture that work there never saw sculpture in their life, you know, but still they like it and keep it, and it's part of their life. Here, somebody take picture of the. Okay, so we moved to my biggest sculpture that I made in Singapore in 2008. It was inaugurated. It's a square between a building and a constructor that made two high-rise buildings. Was commissioned to by Singapore authority to make a monument. So they made an international competition, and I gave my idea, and I won the competition, and I made this sculpture of 18.5 meters high. And my idea here was, you see, it's all figures in a spiral that goes up to the top, and I consider it as the social structure, where the social structure that people fight to get to the top, and the better you become, you climb up the ladder. Some people go up, some people go down, and on the top there is a figure that holding the sort of the plan of what you see from the top, this sculpture from the top. And he is like the architect of the social construction, I would say. So for me, by the way, I didn't know anything about Singapore when I got the commission, which was considered maybe the most expensive I ever made, because it cost $1.5 million to build. And I'm talking about 2008. It was commissioned 2006. It took 2 years to bring it to life. And since then, it became an icon in Singapore. And I get so many regards from Israelis that visiting Singapore, and they say, immediately they recognize my language. So here is from a little bit distance. I could spend an hour telling you the story of this sculpture, but we have to make it very shorter. So here is different pictures of, and the top part is also moving around. And that's from the inside out. Wow. And as I told you before, with the oil moed that I made in the Negev, I wanted the people to get in, to feel the sculpture from the inside. But Singapore people are very strict, and they didn't want anybody to go into the sculpture. They close it with a fence, and they made some plants and everything, and they don't let people go inside. And that was my idea, that people can identify with the sculpture by being like inside, like you go to the church and you admire the height of the monument. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Wow. And that's how it's lit by night. Okay, now I'll show you another thing that I'm very proud of in China. That's a museum of art that was just became opened, and they asked me to put images all around the building, and they left some like a window. It's not a window; it's like a niche. But they wanted to make a metal sculpture, but I thought that's the exact place for vitrage, for colored windows. So I used the same technology that I showed you before of the transparent windows, and I put it all around the building. different images that deals with the windows. Maybe we'll see it from close, ancient windows that it's typical to a village next door to this place. And I made some sort of an homage to the windows, but we have to see it from close. But I don't know if you see the arrow. Can you see the arrow? So here are different windows here and here, ancient windows that I use the motif of the ancient windows to integrate them into the up-to-date windows. So this is a museum that all around has my images, and it's for good. And I think that I'm very proud of this kind of work that maybe it's not sculpture, but it's part of the architecture. And that's what interests me very much, to make a dialogue with architecture. So here it comes to life, actually. And here is a bigger part of the museum. And you can see all around, it's my images. So that's okay. And now I'll show you another project. You see on the back, there's a home for elderly people. I have contact with the company that build very luxurious residence for elderly people in China, all around China. And every time they make a building, they ask me to do something about it. Here is a square in front of this home for elderly people. It's near a lake. Since it's near a lake, I took the image of boats, and I made 6 boats in different colors, but it's only the sort of a skeleton of a boat. It's just a reminder of a boat, but in fact, it's a very beautiful skeleton that I like very much. So I'll show you some images. You see here some of they scatter in a square with the grass, and give, I thought, a nice feeling of the connection between the boat or the place and the water and the lake. So that's, I thought, a very nice elements that the skeleton of the boats. Okay, this is another project that I made in a also elderly residence for elderly people. They wanted all around about 80-meter stripe all around the lobby. So I took the idea because around it is a very beautiful garden. By the way, the Chinese are specialized in gardening. They have absolutely beautiful gardening. So I took the element of the gardens around and made a stripe in the building all around, a stripe of 80-meter, different elements. And I made them in Israel in my studio, and I brought them to China, and I only painted the wall. You see the color parts are made on the wall directly in the place. And then I took the metal drawing, I call it metal drawing, and I put it on top. And here you can see how all the little elements get together. And you see here again another picture of all the elements, and also butterfly putting between the images, like they are three-dimensional and they're floating in the lobby. So this is the place where I was standing to install the work. So that's why the picture was taken while I was working on the installation. So here you can see the colors that I used, and that's part of the installation. I wish I can show you images of the installation. It's I think a lot of people are interested in the way it was put on the wall, but we don't have the time for it. This one is also a recent sculpture I made in Taiwan. You know, this area of the sea of Asia has a lot of storm, a lot of tornadoes. So I dedicate this to a tornado, but a tornado made of butterflies. So the tornado bring beauty, the tornado of movement, of beauty, as against the tornado, which normally made a lot of damage to, it's about 10 meters high, and it stands in front of a big shopping mall. So also it's a competition that I won in Taiwan, and in fact, Taiwan is one of the countries that they admire my work and give me a lot of commission. And also I got 2 major prizes for outdoor sculpture in Taiwan, between hundreds of projects that they make. And I'm quite happy and proud of it. So this is this butterfly tornado. They made the construction. They made the big construction, because that's something I cannot make in Israel. Only the butterfly I made in my studio, and then I flew it to Taiwan and gave instruction how to install it. By the way, this pole was later painted red because I didn't like the way it was made, so they painted red. All around these sort of places to sit in the shape of butterflies. This is while they made installation, so the picture is not so good. Here you can see the butterflies are places to sit and relax, you see, around the sculpture. This picture was taken from the building. And also I must say that I myself haven't seen it in my eyes, you know, because of the corona in the last 3 years. I couldn't fly to the Asia. So all the sculptures that I made in those years, I can see them only after they were done in the pictures. So here's a close-up. Another project in Taiwan, it's in another competition that I won. It's an athletic stadium in Hsinchu. It's the second city, biggest city of Taiwan, and I made sort of a race, like a Tour de France of a bicycle. Since it's an athletic stadium, I used images of sport, of course, and also it got the shape of a dragon. You know, dragon is part of a Taiwan tradition. So they found it very close to their culture, you know. But when I thought of it, I thought of the movement, the cyclist, which I like very much, and it's a part of my motives. And it's interesting to make it in such a big scale. You know, it's about 14 meters long and about 4 meters high. And there are many cyclists. And I had to take 4 assistants together with me, and we spent a month in Taipei, using a factory to sit there and to paint by hand all this bicycle. And it was an endless work. I think we work 10 hours a day for a whole month until we finish the sculpture. And in fact, there's 2 more sculptures of the same project. I'll show them in a minute. So there are like 3 sculptures that surround the stadium. Here's another view of the sculpture. on the back, you can see the stadium, the amphitheater, the arena. And that's how it looks by night. So it really looks like a dragon, right? And that's another part of, in the same area, of two cyclists riding sort of on the sidewalk. And they are bigger than life size. They're about 2.5 meters high. And this is like a close up on the cyclist. And that's another one of a runner when they reach the line, the final line. So that's like homage to the runners. And behind is a stadium. Another sculpture that also was made about 3 years ago of this cyclist, two cyclists surrounded with butterflies. Normally I call it euphoria, a different version of euphoria. And it was installed in a new museum in Tainan. It's a museum that was designed by a Japanese architect. Very beautiful museum of modern art. And the sculpture was installed at the front of the museum. So I thought it's a great compliment. I wish the Tel Aviv Museum would commission me to make a sculpture in front of the museum, but unfortunately it doesn't happen. And the Taiwanese invited me, and I'm very proud of it. So that's a close-up of that sculpture. And that's different angles of the same sculpture. And its height, it's about 3.5, 4 meters high. And look at the architecture around. It's very beautiful museum. Amazing architecture. It was open about 2 years ago. Another wall, again, in a residence for elderly people in China. And it's a poem in Chinese. I don't know a word of what it says, you know, and I cannot read Chinese, although once I tried, but I couldn't make it. And I just took the font, the different Chinese font. I gave it a transformation. I play with it like I play with the colors. Only some people can read what it says, but the poet is there. It's a poet that was written maybe 400 years ago, 500 years ago by a Chinese poet. I received it from the house that commissioned it. And I play with the shapes of the unbelievable writing fonts of the Chinese, which I think everyone that can write Chinese is an artist, you know. And I think you must be an artist to write in Chinese, although everyone does it, but it's amazing. So I play with the background also. The background was painted on the wall, also according to my instruction. It's not me that did the painting, but but I gave them the plan and the colors and everything, and they follow my instructions. And it's a big wall, and there's even a door here, and it's a very pleasant color for this lobby. So here we go. Another sculpture going back to Sweden in the city of Malmö. I was asked to do a piece on a building of like a residential area, not very fancy, but they decided to put some art on the building. How nice, you know. I think in Israel you don't see much a building that they use art. And here is from close up. And look at the runners are put in such a place where they look like they're running on a road, and it's a small piece, and it gives the building like a jewelry, I think, like, you know, a piece of interest. So I thought it's a nice idea. This is a park in China where I made about 5 different sculptures, all deal with butterflies, but different images that use the butterfly. This is 2 trees, a couple of trees full of butterflies. Again, the construction was made in China. No, in fact, I sent it from Israel. Also, the big piece was sent to Israel as opposed to other sculptures, and it was installed there with the Chinese help, and I think it came quite beautiful. You see, the whole thing this is 2 bicycle riders together on a bike, driving or riding in a cloud of butterflies. And all the sculpture has to do with butterflies. And it's a big, huge park, you know, that are in China. And look how we can learn from the Chinese that invest in putting sculpture in parks. How many places we see in Israel that has sculpture in parks? Very little. So I think it's a good lesson for us. And here is runners. Also, here is there are in butterflies and flowers. They're running. They surrounded by those colorful. And I like the contrast between the flatness of the runners and the 3-dimension and the colorful of what's left, what they leave behind. And here are 2 dancers also in the middle of butterflies. So it's a celebration of butterflies, color and everything. This is a train station in China. Also, they put art in a train station. So this is 11 meters long and about 3.5 meters high. And every station invite an artist, and the artist put an image or a piece of art in the station, which make it very, you know, very nice to live or to stay there. Instead of advertising everywhere, they put a piece of art. You know, why not? And that's a park. We back to Taiwan. There's a science park in Taiwan. They invited me a few pieces that will be in different area of the park. And that's the same idea like Steph Wertheimer did in the Galilee. It's a scientific park where people working hard to, you know, with startup companies, but they're surrounded by art. So this one is the main sculpture, is a tree of butterflies. And again, the butterfly were made in Israel in my studio, and the construction was done in Taiwan. And I brought the butterfly and installed them on the tree. And that's another area where is it? They have a residential in the park. They have a residential area. So I made 3 sculptures that has to do with the images of home, you know, where people feel more intimate. So I made windows. Here is a dog with the flowers, and some other places. Here is butterflies on the window, and it's like very Israeli. Avatiach, watermelon, and so on. So, you see the residence is behind. And another part, we made a row of cyclists. cyclists that are, driving near the road, give again the feeling of nature, of being in nature, of free time, of sport, and every cyclist has a different image. This one has this leather with the birds, and other, let's see, you see father and daughter, and the bird, and all these were painted. I went there to do the painting, but the construction, the structure was done by the Taiwanese, and they're very, very able people, and they do wonderful work. I was amazed by the technology, and I just made a painting. So I went there for about 2 weeks, and I made all the paintings.
Dudu, how much longer? How many more images? Because
I can stop now if you wish, and answer the question.
It's already time, and people.
What?
If it's okay with you to stop.
Yes, it's fine. It's fine because it's endless what I do.
It is.
Make another hour, but you get the feeling. You get the language. You get so we can stop here. And
we have a very good question for you to think about, but let me just, it is endless, and we can enjoy it forever. It's just so delightful. So thank you. There is a question to you that is actually very interesting. Can you please explain a bit about your process from an idea for a sculpture to fruition?
Okay,
like
I would say,
rather than showing more images, people want to know your process.
Yes. So I would say, very important to say that basically I'm not a sculptor. I show you a lot of sculptures, and everybody called me a sculptor, but basically I'm a painter. I was trained as an artist, as a painter, and I always thought I will do two-dimensional work, and all the artists that I like were not sculptures, they're mostly painters. But at a certain point, I wanted to find my own language. So after different experiments and all that, I tried to combine painting with sculpture, with the construction. So that's important to say that all my images started from painting, started from ideas that I conceived as a painter. Also, I would say that classical sculptures are very attached to the material. If you work in wood, if you work in steel, you want to emphasize the material, okay? But what I'm doing is covering the material with my paint, because I want my sculptures to stand between painting and sculpture, or contain painting. So I build a structure and then I cover it with my painting. So I get both. I get the 3D and I get the painting. And I think that I created a language that is make my sculpture very different and distinguished. So that's part of my way of working. My heritage is a painted sculpture. And in fact, I would say that even the Egyptian art that is so ancient, from 2,000 years, 3,000 years, were also painted. The paint was disappeared with the time, and only the structure stays, but it used to be painted. So it could be the same in my sculpture, that the paint will fade off or whatever, but the construction will stay. So that's two parts that's important, the construction and the paint, and I try to make them one.
I was feeling a little guilty toward the audience, in the sense that we had a lot of time to speak about the psychology of your work. and your audience didn't hear it. So would you like to speak about it? Would you like me to speak a little bit about that?
I would say, before I let you talk, but I would say that a lot of my images has to do with different experience that I had in my life, and a lot of things came to life because they were based on memories. And the early memories were, I mean, or my memories from youth, from my family, from my parents, for my things that I went through in even in school or whatever. Go back to my kindergarten. They finally come to life when I start doing art. So it's whatever you see has a base very deep in my early memories. So that's, I think, important to say. Just to give one sample, I was a cyclist since I was a child. So cycling is part of my life, you know, and I wanted to express my experience and how I felt when I used my muscles together with the machinery of the bicycle, and we become together, you know, when I cycle. And so this was an element that was important to me, and I wanted to express it to the world. So that's just one thing that I can mention.
Which is very interesting, because it does get expressed in the physicality, not just in the images themselves, but the physicality and the movement in your sculpture. Movement is extremely important to you, and it connects to freedom. So it's not just being sensitive to traditions and sculpture and culture, both in Israel, very deeply so, and respect to the other cultures that you contribute art to. You and I, when we spoke, and I would like the audience to gain some from that, because I feel so enriched. Would you speak a bit about, because part of my understanding is you need for beauty, you need for freedom, comes from even this kind of symbolism in the Taiwan tornado sculpture. What you do is take the fear and the terror and the horribleness and turn it into beauty and life, which is to a large extent what you did with your father's family and your heritage from that. And I would you speak a bit about that? Because I think that's an element that an extremely strong motivator in your life.
Yeah, so I tell you.
But it comes out like the opposite. Like it's also easy and happy and delightful.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, when you do art also, you kind of express yourself. That's one thing. But also you make different decision about the creation. And when I grew up, my mother was suffer from mentally sort of depression from time to time, not always, but time to time. And I saw her suffering, and I thought to myself, when I started to do the painting, and naturally, when you're a young artist, you try to express the sorrow of the world, and I did different images that were sort of very gloomy, and it's very easy to drop to these places of depression and sorrow. It has even some spirituality, in it, and I say to myself, that's the place I don't want to go into. This is the area where I want to avoid. I want to express happiness. I want to express pleasure. I want to convey something positive. And in fact, I'm optimistic in basically, but I want to avoid those elements that maybe I inherited from my mother, of depression. And I said, by doing my art, I can get it out. I can avoid it. I can kick it out from my mind, And I thought, let's concentrate on something positive, I wouldn't say happiness, but at least positiveness, So I want somebody that look at my work, get a feeling of pleasure, not depression. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the early painting of mine, when I was a student and all that, I see the depression is getting into it, and it's very easy to get into ugliness and darkness and all these areas that maybe look very spiritual or whatever. So I want to avoid it. And also I try to avoid political issues because and they also cause you kind of depression to see the situation of the world and so on. So I wanted to be more close to French artists like Matisse, like Bonnard, and artists that enjoy their family life, enjoy their life, they enjoy the nature, enjoy whatever they can enjoy, because especially in Israel, that we live in a situation where all the danger, all the wars, the situation of conflict, and I didn't want to express it in my art. I thought it's enough the journalists writing about it, some writers deals with it, but I want to get to another realm. So that's why also the colors developed. I thought Israeli don't use much colors. A lot of art is black and white or very gloomy art or very sort of fade colors, and I wanted the opposite. I thought that the color are important and I want to use them very strongly and get the feeling of a normal life, like I look at the artists, French artists, Dutch artists, Italian artists, and I thought, they don't deal all the time with political issue or depression or whatever. So, that was the guideline, I would say, or my way of looking at the art. So that's why my art developed as it became.
Thank you for taking the heritage from your mother's side. Could you speak? Can you speak a bit about your father's side?
And my father...
And the story of the knife.
Yeah, I tell you, my father was a different, he was kind of a very stable person, character and all that. And he was work with his hands. As I told you, his profession was cutting leather. He worked for the shoes industry, and also at the time he made stripes for transmission. You know, there was electric engine, and it moved the power into a machine. So there was a transmission belt that he made, that he learned from his father in Poland. So I think that when I became an artist and started to look at my language, and I started to cut without even thinking, years later, I asked myself, why do I like cutting so much? And then it came to my mind that this is my heritage. I remember as a child, my father took me to his little shop, little factory, I would say, and helped him to cut the leather. I was standing behind the machine, and I cut the leather with him. So it must affected my future thinking, or what I consider as something that express myself. So it was inevitable, you know, that I will get into it. But at the time, I wasn't even thinking that, you know, it's part of my heritage. And I never discuss it with my father, you know, because it didn't came to my mind. And later he died, so it wasn't even a chance to discuss it. But I think that...
What about with your uncle? Were you able to discuss it with him?
With my uncle?
Yeah, with his brother.
His brother?
Yeah.
Oh, my brother.
No, your father's brother.
My brother father? Well, my brother father had only one brother alive, because most of the family died. His brother came with him to Israel, but his brother was a kind of intellectual, I would say, more than my father, and he went into being a teacher, you know, and he was in head of a school, you know. He had a school, and he was a head of the school, and all his life he was into teaching, you see. But I didn't have much discussion with him about it. He always were interested in what I'm doing, and very proud with myself, and he lived much longer than my father, so he saw me growing, and he saw me becoming known, and he was proud. But we really didn't discuss it much, you know, the issue. But I think that my father had the impact on me. There's no question.
Mm-hmm. And I still hope that you find that knife that your father received from his father.
Yes, yes.
Gave you.
Yes, that I told you that when he left his home, he was 18 years old when he left Poland, and went to Israel. Israel was nothing at the time. His father gave him a few knives that he probably used by himself, which wasn't even a knife. It was a piece of metal that was filed to become a knife, and the other end was covered with some piece of cloth, you know, so you can hold it from one side and cut the other side. And many years later, he showed it to me, and he gave it to me. And I was amazed, you know, and I said, I mean, he goes overseas, you know, and to an unknown world, and his father gave him, like, I would say, like a tool for life. What is the tool? A piece of metal in the shape of a knife, and that's what will save you. That you can find a job if you have some tools. It's amazing, you know, when we think of today and what people, you know, 70 or 80 years ago went through. It's unbelievable. And it's true, he used it at the time, you know. Amazing.
Yeah, there is another question by someone else. You and I can talk forever, and we will probably will continue. Another question: if you experience your work in Israel as different from your work abroad,
What?
if you experience your work in Israel as different from your work abroad, outside of Israel?
I would say, first, I must say that I made a decision many years ago to live and create in Israel. Mm-hmm. The temptation to go abroad and to live in New York and London, where there are art centers, was very tempting. And and I made my studies abroad, and it was quite easy for me to stay, like many other Israeli artists that want to be international, and they leave Israel and live abroad, although they keep contact with Israel, but still, if you take Aricha and Agam and many artists that, and it was quite tempting, and I would say I think that if I would live abroad, maybe I will get even further, but I decided to live here. So I create everything here, but I find it with the time, that the world is thinking alike, thinking the same, and you can live in Israel and do art that fit other part of the world. Is no difference. The fact that I live here doesn't make me a local artist. I can live here, but I'm very well aware of what's happening in the world. Mm-hmm. I'm very well connected because communication becomes so easy, with internet and telephones and satellite, whatever. So there's no need to live, and I feel very comfortable here, and I like living here, and this is a part of my language is Hebrew, and the mentality, and my friends and my family, my children, and everything. So I decided that I maybe there's a certain price for living here, but I will do it. And but I knew in the same time that the market is not in Israel. Israel is too small to contain, and there are so many artists in Israel, and they're all very good artists. Mm-hmm. And I think we are having great talents in Israel that can be anywhere in the world, but the market is not here. The market is abroad. So there are ways to deal with the market abroad, but I don't think that the images are different. If I deal with bicycle, there's other places they use the same idea. If I do something a bit with nature, with butterfly, with birds, whatever, it's the same other places. We are not different, unless, if you deal with politics, then it's become local. But if you deal with issues that belong to everyone on the planet, then you can live anywhere. So I even when I compete, I'm with the international competition, and I give my ideas, you don't say this is an Israeli, they look at it, they don't know who I am, and they say this is what represent us, this is what we want, If I just did a butterfly in a train station in Taiwan, and it's because it's international. They asked me, by the way, to create a typical Taiwanese butterfly that they want to show the public. So I said, okay, partly will be my own butterfly, because butterfly I do don't exist in the world. I created them, but other ones, I look at the they Google, you know, I made Google on different butterflies of Taiwanese butterflies, and I made a mix, you know, part of the butterfly they can recognize as their own, you know. So I think that there's not much difference, I would say. The difference, I would say, is that how much money they spend on commission artists on outdoor works, you know, which in Israel it's close to nothing, you know, and also they don't preserve the works, you know, they don't maintain it, you know. Once they do a sculpture, forget it, you know. They never ask me to check the colors, to maybe refresh the colors, since you know, a sculpture needs maintenance. They don't do anything about it. That's a pity, because many of my works are losing their brightness, and they losing their power because they don't give any attention to maintenance. You know, you think once you do this sculpture, it's forever, but it's not. You know, it's just like taking care of plants. You have to take care, to irrigate it, to check if you know, some sculpture get rusted, and I ask the owners, you know, please let's fix it. They don't care. They don't give a damn, you know, they don't care. And the sculpture getting, and I think within the years, if it wouldn't be taken care of, they will disappear. And some did, you know.
Well, maybe our recording will keep it alive. But, but there's so many more questions I would love to ask in terms of your on the one hand, putting up things on walls, on the other hand, looking for transparency, the humor. There's so many themes that we can probably write a book together about. But what is anyone? Harold, we have actually in the audience Harold Kudler. Harold, are you there? He is both a psychoanalyst and a person with great interest in the arts. And he always has questions. How come, what are you doing now? Where are you? Oh, he's not here anymore? I don't know. I don't see him. Robbie, can you see Harold? Whoops, oops. I don't know what happened. Sorry, I was hoping he would.
I'll try to get him in. Give me 1 second.
Oh, here you go. Okay, just a minute. Because I'm sure that Harold is full of questions and ideas, and you would love to hear them. Is he there? Oh, well.
He's coming in right now, looks like.
Okay, no problem.
Anyway, if somebody wants to ask and write me to my website,
we will send you everything.
I can answer by writing or whatever.
Wonderful. And we can, and when does the center receive a butterfly?
So
we want a butterfly in the center. You're not getting.
No, I don't understand what you're asking.
Exactly. I hope that our center, the International Center for MultiGenerational Legacies of Trauma, will have your butterfly. So think about it.
Okay.
I want to thank again. I don't have enough words to thank you. Toda.
Welcome. I wish you
Yeah,
I wish we had more time, but
well, we
yeah.
can maybe next time.
Yeah.
And as long as we are still here, God still keeps us here, we can continue the conversation and learn a lot more.
Okay.
And I hope to see you in Israel when I come.
Okay, maybe I come to New York, I'll meet
That
you.
would be exciting. I would definitely go to the sukkah when it gets.
Yeah, I was so expecting so much to see it.
There's a lot to see. Actually, you gave us a tour of places. I say, oh, gee, I should still go there and see it in reality. So thank you so much. Thank the audience for staying with us this whole time. God bless you. It's a real treat.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh.
And, it's a pleasure, and I feel privileged that I can pass my ideas and my images into people that are interested. And, you know, that's our role in life, you know, is to not only to make the art, but to promote it as well. So I'm very happy that you gave me the chance, and we'll keep in touch.
Well, I love to. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I can close, yeah?
Yes. Thank you so much.